is Olatunji Taylor, and I'm the founder of Aricares Alliance. I'm really glad you're here with me today. Our topic is planning for long term care, smart strategies for aging with confidence. This is one of the topics that touches almost every family at some point, but it is also one of the topics people often avoid for as long as possible because it can be emotional, uncomfortable, and overwhelming. Families often ask, when should we start planning? How do we know when more support is needed? What kind of care should we be thinking about? Uh, some would ask, how do we prepare financially? And that is a very good question. And how do we have this conversation without creating fear or conflict? Actually, sometimes this kind of conversation will bring about major argument. But today, the good news is that I'm gonna focus on walking you through the most important things families should understand about long-term care planning. This should help you think more clearly, to ask better questions, and take better steps. But just a brief note before we begin, today's session is for educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for legal, financial, or insurance advice. So let's begin here. And I'm going to ask a question that is mostly asked. Then the question is, why do families need to plan for long term care earlier than they think? And that's a very fantastic question. And I will give you a short story before I delve into, the questions proper. A 79-year-old mother of two was supposed to celebrate her 80th birthday later this year. Her children, who live in Germany, were looking forward to that moment. Sadly, instead of planning a celebration, they encountered a sudden loss. Their mother, who lived with one of her granddaughters, had a pre existing history of asthma and suffered an acute medical episode. The granddaughter loved her, I believe. She cared about her. But when the emergency happened, she did not know what the health plan was. She didn't know where the medical information was or what steps to take first. She panicked. And by the time they reached the hospital, it was too late. That story is painful, but it is also a warning. A quick reference to the National Institute on Aging says families should become organized before a medical emergency and ensure that someone they trust knows where important papers can be found. So, one of the biggest mistakes family make is waiting for a crisis before they start planning. They wait for a fall, hospitalization, worsening memories, the primary caregivers burn out, or a moment. But the problem with crisis planning or planning in crisis is that it usually becomes uh, chaotic. It comes with pressure. Families get emotional, they're divided, confused, and forced to choose from fewer options. So planning earlier gives families something very important, and that is choice. It gives them time to ask, what does our loved one want? What kind of supports may be needed now? What may be needed later? And what can we realistically afford as far as finance is concerned? Who will help make the decisions? That's where you start thinking about the power of attorney or a fiduciary or someone you trust in the family. What resources do we already have? So, planning early reduces problems. It also helps older adults stay more involved in their future. And that matters because long term planning should not should not be something done to someone. That is what I think. It's not. It should not be something done to someone. It should be something done with them whenever possible. So here's a simple question I want you to think about. If your loved ones need change suddenly, I mean, in the next 6 months, would your family know what to do? Well, you have to be sincere with yourself. If the answer is no, that does not mean you have failed. It simply means now is the right time to begin thinking ahead. And that brings us to the next important point. And it's a question. What does your long term care actually mean? Or let me say, what does long term care actually mean to you? Okay, a lot of people hear the phrase long term care and immediately they think about one thing, maybe a nursing home. But long term care is much broader than that. Long term care simply means ongoing support over time when a person can no longer fully manage certain parts of daily life safely or independently. That support can include help with bathing, dressing, walking safely, meal preparation, medication reminders, transportation, supervision, memory support, and many other daily needs. Also, long term care can be received in different settings, including at home with home care support, in assisted living, in memory care, and some other facilities like that. So, long term care is not one place, it is not one decision, and it is not always one sudden event. Often, it is a continuum. A person may begin with a little support at home over time. That support may need to increase. So, the key is understanding that needs can change gradually and families need to be ready to adjust. That is why long-term care planning is about, excuse me, it's about preparing for change before change becomes urgent. So the better question is not, will we ever need long-term care? The better question should be, what kind of support may be needed over time? And how do we plan for that early? According to the Administration for Community Living, I have it on my screen right here, and I will read. Someone turning 65 today has almost a 70% chance of needing some kind of long term care support in their remaining years. I don't mean to scare you, but that is a reality. And, that leads to the next issue families struggle with. How do we know when more support may be needed? Many families miss these early signs because they are looking for one dramatic moment, but usually the signs begin much earlier. Some common warning signs may include falls or near falls, forgetting medications, trouble bathing or dressing, skipping meals, increasing confusion, mobility decline, poor housing, missed bills, or isolation, trouble managing transportation, or growing dependence on others for routine tasks. Sometimes the most important sign is not about the older or senior adult alone. Sometimes it is about the family caregiver. A spouse or adult child may be exhausted, overwhelmed, stretched too thin, and anxious, and that matters too. Many families normalize this. They normalize these changes because each one feels those changes feel like very small on its own. But often, small signs often tell a bigger story. A near fall matters. Medication confusion matters. Changes in hygiene matters. Repeated forgetfulness, matters. Caregiver exhaustion matters. You do not have to wait for a disaster to recognize that moral support may be needed. So, here is another question for you to reflect on, right? What may actually be a sign that more support is needed? Yeah. What may actually be a sign that more support is needed? And if once families begin to recognize these signs, they often run into another challenge. And that is the part that I sometimes, I'm very careful talking about. That is the emotional side of planning. Let's be real here. Long-term care planning is deeply personal because this is not just about logistics. It is about the fear of losing someone. It's about the fear of losing independence, identity, the fear, the control, family roles, and sometimes grief. Older adults may fear losing independence. Adult children may fear sounding disrespectful or controlling. Siblings may disagree about what is really happening. Some families avoid the conversation because no one wants to upset anyone, and it's totally understandable. Others avoid it because talking about future care makes the changes feel so close or so real, and that is also understandable. But avoiding the conversation does not stop the changes from happening. It must happen. It only delays the planning. So, how do families begin, making this plan? Usually, the best approach is start early and stay calm and ask questions. And now, of course, once families begin planning, one of the best or the biggest, excuse me, one of the biggest concerns becomes discussions about finances. It is usually around the finances, and that is very valid because long-term care planning is not only about emotions; it is also financial. And one of the mistakes families often make is assuming they will figure it out later. But no, the truth is, care can be expensive. Support needs can last longer than expected, and costs are not always limited to one popular or obvious category. Families may be dealing with multiple costs, like in-home care costs, home modifications, transportation, medical supplies, facility cost, respite care, and some hidden costs of unpaid caregiving, including the lost time of the primary caregiver, lost income, and emotional strain. Another common mistake is assuming that having insurance means everything is covered. Sadly, that is not always the case. Even when a family has some kind of uh, how do I put it, some kind of long-term care coverage, there's there are still important questions to ask. And the questions are like, do we actually have long-term care coverage? What services are covered? Does coverage apply to home care, assisted living, or both? When the benefits begin, is there a waiting period? What document is required? Who should we contact to understand the policy clearly? What costs may be uh, out of pocket? These are not questions families should be trying to answer in the middle of a crisis. They should be asking them early. So, now that we have talked about planning, the warning signs, emotions, and finances, let's quickly talk about the next steps families can take now. And my number one step, anytime, any day, is you start the conversation. Do not wait for the perfect moment, or you have to start earlier. And actually, start earlier than you think you need to. Number two, assess current needs carefully and honestly. Look at the safety of the person, look at the mobility, the memory, the daily routines, and whether the current level of support is truly sustainable. Number three, learn the care options. Understand the difference between aging in place with support, such as home care, assisted living, memory care, or and other levels of care. Number four, review financial and insurance information. Trust me, this is so important. Find the documents, review the policies, ask questions, know what coverage may or may not exist. For instance, as of today, Medicare states very clearly that it does not pay for most long-term care. And even if they do, you have to wait. It's a long wait. So plan early. Number five, identify the real people, or let me say the key people, who will help make decisions. It may be the best time to, This may be the best time to assign the power of attorney or get a fiduciary. You can check one of our previous webinar. We actually talked about power of attorney and fiduciary. So who is involved? Those conversations have to happen now. Number six is make a plan before a crisis. It does not have to be perfect. It just has to begin. So small steps matter. A lot of families delay planning actually because they think they need all the answers before they begin. That is not true. That is not. You do not need all the answers. You need a starting point. The first step does not need to be perfect. Really, the first step doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to happen. So, as I wrap up, I want you to live with this. Do not wait for a crisis, right? Planning early gives families more choices. And care needs often change gradually, not all at once. So you have to be ready emotionally, financially. Ask the questions about insurance early. And the best first step is simply to begin that conversation. Start talking about it today. So, planning for long-term care it's not really about fear. You don't really have to be scared about it. We have to make peace with the fact that it is a reality. So we have to get ready now and helping our loved ones age. Age with dignity depends on the kind of plans we make today. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope this session has given you a clearer uh, thought about long-term care planning. And if you have any questions, please you can ask me now, or maybe later you can email me at olatunjitaylor@aricaresalliance.com. It is showing on your screen right now. And if you found this helpful, please do not hesitate. Share it with a caregiver, a family member, or loved one, or whoever may benefit from it. Thank you again. I look forward to seeing you in our next webinar.